Hello and welcome to the ADA Accommodations Information and Procedures for Faculty presentation.
Hi, this is Judy Spain. I'm the Georgia Independent College Association Compliance Collaborative Program Consultant.
And I'm Jennifer Wilson Loggins, the Learning Center Director and Disability Service Provider for Brenau University.
Jennifer will be talking more specifically about how faculty are aware of how students are accommodated here at Brenau University and what types of roles faculty members play in that. But in general, I'd like to ask you these specific questions, and how would you answer them? Are all parts of your classroom physically accessible? Are all your lectures and assigned readings posted on the internet accessible? Do you encourage students with disabilities to succeed in the same manner that you encourage students without disabilities? Have you had negative experiences with students who have disabilities? Do these negative experiences make you feel guarded or negative about working with disabled students in general? I need you to keep these ideas or these concerns in mind when you're thinking about how Brenau University does an excellent job in accommodating the students, and what is your role in this accommodation process. Jennifer?
Thank you, Judy. So you may be wondering, what is my role? The Learning Center is the place where students will send their documentation and get the letter of accommodations, but then what should I do? And so here are some basic things to keep in mind as the faculty role. We as faculty must ensure that students with disabilities are treated fairly and provided access to all course materials and required activities, keeping in mind the confidentiality of the students' needs. I want to point out that the accommodations are also covered under FERPA, and so we do need to make sure that if we're discussing things like test proctoring or making accommodations for the student in the lab environment, things like that, that we have those conversations in a private environment with that student, and that we be sure also on emails not to email multiple students about maybe multiple students have accommodations and you're trying to schedule with all of them. Be sure to maintain privacy in all electronic or verbal communication regarding accommodations. So more into your role. So if the student comes to you, it's very common that a student will just come to the professor. They feel comfortable and have a rapport with the professor, and they'll say, hey, I just got diagnosed with this. I have cancer, or something has happened, or I have dyslexia. If the student comes to you and discloses this information regarding a disability or the history thereof, this information is to be kept confidential and limited to what's needed to accommodate the students. So please do direct them to the Learning Center. When presented with the accommodation letter, the student we'll discuss how the accommodations will take place, practical implications, logistics of, are you going to be testing at the Learning Center? Many students choose to, but some students do not want to. They prefer for faculty to accommodate them. And if they need testing accommodations, just work it out with us, and we will advise you how to provide that reduced distraction environment and the extended time, how to add that in Canvas if you do not already know how to do so. So try not to personally receive documentation of disability. Sometimes a student may try to hand you their hospital discharge summary or give you all kinds of documentation, but really letting them know, I'm not the appropriate place to receive this. However, there is a place for you to document these things, and that's the Learning Center. And they will then work with me to let me know what you need, but I don't need to know your diagnosis or exactly what's going on with you. Some students may just choose to share with faculty, and that's okay, but please know that the proper place for documentation is the Learning Center. Please make sure that all your syllabi contain the standard information regarding the current DSP, Disability Service Provider, and the compliance officer for the university with contact information. Typically, this is on Faculty Commons or within your department. There will be a template as a standard syllabus, and this will be on there. Please do check and make sure, since Dr. Vince retired 2 years ago, that your syllabi don't still say Dr. Vince Yelikoski, which we all love Dr. Vince, but make sure that it has been updated in the past 2 years with current information. So the student process. You may be advising students who are unaware of the process, and that is a common thing that you'll advise students just to connect with the Learning Center for all accommodation needs, whether it's a temporary injury, accident, or if it is something that is a lifelong disability. Step-by-step instructions, you can provide those to students by giving them the link to our website. This also has contact information. So the process, it also involves a review of that documentation. I typically take 3 to 4 days and go through that documentation that is provided to ensure that it is current. It must be within the last 2 years. It must be notating a specific disability with functional limitations. It must have recommendations. There are some times when I would reach out to the student and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to need additional information from you or a more recent documentation. However, after I review that documentation for eligibility, then if it does qualify, I will make the letter of accommodations out according to those needs. So I will prepare an official letter of accommodations based on usually the recommendations of the medical provider along with the nature of the disability of the student. I'll have an interactive discussion with the student regarding how their disability impacts them day to day and in the educational setting, and we will go from there. I'll then email the student the letter of accommodations, and this is only emailed to the Tiger Mail email address that's on file for them in Campus Web, not to random Yahoo or whatever they ask. It has to be official and confidential. And I'll also email them a welcome email with instructions, policies, testing procedures, and more information. The letter of accommodation is always provided to the students as a PDF file, and the students cannot alter this. If you ever have questions about the authenticity of a letter, please reach out to the Learning Center, and then we can double check. The faculty process for the notification of student accommodations. So how do you as a faculty member know, as the professor, how do you know that the student has accommodations? I know that if you've maybe worked at a previous institution, there may be a different process, and so it's important to know how this works at Brenau. The professor will actually be notified by the student. The student is instructed to share the letter of accommodations with all current professors, academic advisor, and fieldwork or internship coordinators. At the time of receipt of that letter, if it's mid-semester when they receive it, it must still go out then. But then, therefore, afterwards, we will go forward and to future semesters and tell them, every semester, at the start of each and every semester, you must email this or print it and provide it during office hours to all professors that you're working with. Just because you had myself as a professor the first year as a freshman for a course doesn't mean that I will remember you had those accommodations year 4, and they may change. So you need to do that at the start of each and every semester. And we really stress this to our students, that it's their responsibility and that accommodations can't be provided retroactively. So if you fail to provide that letter of accommodations, then you cannot expect faculty to add your extra time if they don't know to do so. So we tell our students that really this is an important part of self-advocacy. It is best if the student actively participates in this process rather than saying, hey, can the Learning Center staff just send that to my professors? Because we do believe that oftentimes students who have disabilities have been told, oh, well, I'll do this for you. And that robs them of that autonomy and independence, that if they're capable of doing it for themselves, then they should be doing it for themselves. And when they move forward to the workplace, they will need to learn self-advocacy skills to go and say, hey, I have these needs. They need to be accommodated. It's my legal right. So I'd like to take a moment just to read the current Brenau University Policy Guideline 606, and I'm just going to read it verbatim from the catalog. So Section B1 states, one of the reasonable accommodations made to students is extended testing time. The general rule is to allow time and a half for testing. These students can take their exams at the Learning Center in a quiet environment, or faculty can make their own arrangements. Sometimes professors will place students in an office or an adjacent classroom and give them extended time. Many have encouraged them to use word processors. In unique circumstances, professors have given alternative exams, such as an oral exam. It is best for faculty to discuss special arrangements with the student and the Learning Center staff. So when arranging testing accommodations, you may be wondering, is it the Learning Center's sole responsibility? Can I proctor for them? How do we logistically work out? Because I know that it can be very challenging sometimes if you have back-to-back classes, to figure out how do I honor the extended time, or how do I create the reduced distraction environment. And so we do encourage you to reach out and talk with us about brainstorming some ways that we can do that. We all do have a shared responsibility as a learning community, as faculty and staff, to ensure ADA is honored and accommodations are provided per the letter of accommodations. Students may arrange to take tests at the Learning Center during our business hours, or arrange for faculty to provide accommodations. But prior notice is required for both options, and this is really stressed to students by Learning Center staff that it's not acceptable to wait until midterm and then on the day of midterm give the professor your letter of accommodations and say, you have to stay late for me. That's not appropriate. There's prior planning, and notice for planning must be provided for both options. So some options typically just depends on the situation, the time of the class, and logistically what sort of staff is available. So the Learning Center staff, faculty, departmental, and regional campus staff all frequently provide testing accommodations depending on those specific needs, faculty preferences. One thing I want to share is that if you will allow your students to test at an alternate day or time, that often will provide the Learning Center the ability to work with you. The student will be able to come to the Learning Center and test, or we have, for instance, some limited proctoring availability at the Norcross campus, and that is on certain days and certain times. And so if you will be flexible and allow the student to test during those days and times, then you can receive extra assistance. Or if you would prefer that the student test at the exact same time as your class, then that resource may not be available at all times, as there are certain programs that are evening or weekend outside of the Learning Center hours. Course locations, meeting times, and staff availability all determine what is the best course of action, who should proctor those exams. Of course, all students enrolled at Brenau University have the option to schedule testing at the Learning Center, although some may not find it convenient or preferable depending on their specific situation. So certain tests such as HESI exams just cannot be proctored at the Learning Center due to IT restrictions. Clinical skills assessments and lab exams also cannot be proctored at the Learning Center for logistical, practical reasons. Online program students simply need for their extended time to be added in Canvas by the professor. They actually do not require proctors, or they don't have to come to the Learning Center to schedule. If you typically require all of your class students to use Respondus Monitor or Proctor U, then you can simply do the same for your students who have accommodations. If you don't require any kind of monitoring or proctoring for your online students, then you should not require the students with disabilities to have an additional requirement on them. Testing accommodations at the Learning Center. Students must schedule a testing appointment with the Coordinator of Disability Services a minimum of 3 business days, Monday through Friday, prior to the class testing date. We do encourage students to simply look at all of the test dates on their syllabi at the beginning of the semester, make a list, and provide us with that list so that we can get all test dates on the calendar. The coordinator will then reach out to the professor in a timely manner after a student books a testing appointment. The professor will be asked for a copy of the test to be proctored or the password info for online tests. It's very important that you provide us with this information prior to the scheduled testing date and time so that we can get the student started on time and everything can flow smoothly. Please do check your testing availability settings. If you have a test in Canvas online, make sure that that test is published, available, and the extended time has been added. If you need help with any of those things, reach out to the Learning Center and we can help you. Our business hours are from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and our summer hours may vary as we may be going to continuing education conferences or staff planning meetings. The Learning Center does have limited space and staff, so no walk-in or same-day scheduling is available. Absolutely no weekend testing is available. Extended hours until 7 p.m. appointments are available only for students who are currently enrolled in evening courses. 7 p.m. is the absolute latest the Learning Center can stay open, even with extended hours. ADA compliance grievances. So if the student has concerns regarding the fulfillment of his or her accommodations, then the student typically will contact the Learning Center for guidance and advocacy. This is what we advise. Start with us, and sometimes it's something as simple as the professor just forgot to add the extra time. We can give a simple phone call, email, and that can be rectified right away. It's just, we're all human, a simple error. However, if we as the Learning Center staff and the student together working to reach out to faculty cannot resolve the issue, then students are advised that they must follow the informal and formal grievance procedures per university policy, which is listed online in the intranet. We do encourage you to work with students before things get to this point, because it is much easier to work with the student to, in good faith, try to resolve a situation before it goes into the formal grievance proceedings. If you do have any questions at all, I want you to know that I have an open door policy. I am very accessible, and you can reach me through email, my office phone, or get lots of information from our intranet page that might be useful to your students. But please know that no question is ever a stupid question. You're not the only professor who doesn't know how to add time in Canvas, and it's okay to reach out. That's the proper best practices course of action, is when you just don't know how to honor an accommodation, just reach out to us and we will help you with that. Thank you so much for attending this presentation today, and I hope that you find it of use when working with students with disabilities.